My name doesn't matter anymore. The government made sure of that when they raided our property 3 months ago. They took everything: records, photographs, journals spanning 70 years. They confiscated evidence of what my family had been protecting since 1952. They arrested my father, interrogated my mother for 6 days, and made it very clear that if I ever spoke publicly about what lived on our land, I'd spend the rest of my life in a federal facility that doesn't officially exist. So I'm speaking publicly. Because some truths are more important than personal safety. Because what my family protected for 3 generations deserves to have its story told. And because what the federal government knows about DOGMAN, what they've been tracking and monitoring and keeping from the public, that knowledge needs to get out before more families like mine get destroyed for doing the right thing. We weren't criminals. We weren't harboring a dangerous animal. We were honoring a pact made by my grandfather in 1952, a pact that saved his life and changed our family forever. We were protecting something intelligent, something ancient, something that had more right to that land than we ever did. And we were doing it peacefully, successfully, for 70 years. Until 3 months ago, when federal agents surrounded our property at dawn, armed with automatic weapons and tranquilizer equipment and paperwork authorizing them to seize everything. Until they took him, sedated him, loaded him into a reinforced transport vehicle, and drove away while my father screamed and my mother sobbed and I stood there helpless, watching 70 years of trust and protection get destroyed in 90 minutes. They said he was government property. They said my family had been concealing evidence of a classified species. They said we'd violated laws we didn't know existed, laws that apparently supersede property rights and family bonds and basic human decency. But before they took everything, before they confiscated the journals and photographs and physical evidence, I made copies. Digital files hidden in places they'll never find. Encrypted, distributed, protected the way my family protected him for 3 generations. And now I'm going to tell you everything. The history, the relationship, the truth about what DOGMAN really is and what the government has been doing with the ones they capture. I'm going to violate every threat they made, break every agreement they forced us to sign, and hope that spreading this information wide enough keeps me alive long enough to matter. But before I start, before I tell you about my grandfather's encounter and the 70 years that followed, I need you to like and subscribe to this channel. Not for me, not for algorithm, but because this video will be targeted for removal. The government monitors for content like this, flags it, suppresses it, makes it disappear. The only way this survives is if it spreads faster than they can contain it. Subscribe. Download this video. Re-upload it. Share it everywhere. Make sure that even if they erase me, the story survives. Make sure my family's sacrifice, and his sacrifice, means something. Because 3 months ago, federal agents took a member of our family. Not human by biology, but family by every measure that matters. And what they're doing to him now, what they've been doing to others like him for decades, someone needs to witness it. Someone needs to remember. Someone needs to fight back. It started in 1952. My grandfather, William Hayes, was a Korean War veteran trying to rebuild his life on 200 acres of forested land in northern Michigan. Remote property, closest neighbor 5 miles away, perfect for someone who needed isolation and quiet to deal with what he'd seen in the war. He was clearing land for a cabin when he encountered it. Not it, him. That distinction matters. My grandfather was always very specific about that. Not an animal, not a creature, a person. Different biology, different appearance, but a person nonetheless. The encounter happened at dusk. My grandfather was finishing work for the day when he heard something large moving through the dense forest. He grabbed his rifle, old habit from the war, and turned to face whatever was approaching. What emerged from the trees was 7 feet tall, covered in dark fur, with a canine head and yellow eyes that reflected the dying light. It moved on 2 legs, upright and balanced, with intelligence in its posture and purpose in its approach. My grandfather raised his rifle, finger on the trigger, ready to shoot. But it stopped, 30 feet away, and raised its hands, paws, claws, in a gesture my grandfather recognized. Surrender. Non-aggression. The same gesture soldiers used when crossing lines during tense standoffs. They stared at each other for maybe a minute. My grandfather with his rifle raised. The dogman with its hands up. Neither moving, neither backing down. Just evaluating, measuring, deciding. Finally, my grandfather lowered his rifle. Later, he'd say he didn't know why. Something in those eyes. Something that reminded him of fellow soldiers, of men he'd served with, of intelligence and awareness that deserved respect rather than violence. The dogman lowered its hands, took a step forward, gestured toward the forest, then toward my grandfather, then back to the forest. Come, follow, see. My grandfather followed. He'd tell this story hundreds of times over the years, always with the same wonder. He followed an impossible being deep into the forest, to a den hidden beneath ancient roots, and saw why it had approached him. It was injured, badly, a massive wound in its side, infected and suppurating. It had been caught in an illegal trap, bear trap set by poachers on land that didn't belong to them. The trap had torn muscle and broken ribs. Without treatment, it would die. It showed me the wound, my grandfather would say, deliberately. Like it understood I might be able to help. Like it had observed humans long enough to know we had medical knowledge. It was asking, not begging, not demanding, asking. My grandfather had military medical training, field medicine, basic surgery, enough to keep soldiers alive until they reached proper care. He'd brought medical supplies to his new property. Old habit, always be prepared. He spent 3 hours treating that wound, cleaning it, stitching it, applying antibiotics. The dogman lay still the entire time, conscious and aware, occasionally making low sounds of pain, but never threatening, never attacking. Trusting completely. When my grandfather finished, the dogman stood, tested its mobility, and made eye contact. Then it did something my grandfather never forgot. It placed one massive paw over its heart, then extended that paw toward my grandfather. Gesture of gratitude, promise of debt, acknowledgement that a life had been saved and would be remembered. That night, my grandfather returned to his camp, thought about what had happened, thought about what he'd seen, and made a decision that would define 3 generations of our family. He returned to the den the next day, brought food, water, more medical supplies. The dogman was there, waiting, like it had known he'd come back. They sat together, man and impossible being, and my grandfather spoke. I don't know if you understand me, he said, but I want you to know, this land is yours as much as mine. I won't hunt you, won't reveal you, won't bring others here. You're safe. You have my word. The dogman listened, tilted its head, then stood and walked to a nearby tree, used its claws to carve a symbol into the bark. Simple, geometric, but deliberate and clear. A marker, an agreement, a boundary symbol that meant protected territory. It carved the same symbol on 3 more trees surrounding the den area, then returned to my grandfather and placed its paw over its heart again. Pact acknowledged, promise made, protection accepted. For the next 35 years, until my grandfather died in 1987, that pact held. The dogman lived on the property, hidden in the deep forest. My grandfather built his cabin, started his life, eventually married my grandmother and told her everything. She was skeptical at first, until she saw him for herself. Until she understood this wasn't fantasy or delusion, but reality living in their forest. When my father was born in 1960, my grandfather introduced him to the dogman when he was 8 years old. Old enough to understand. Old enough to keep the secret. Old enough to learn what protection meant. This is Marek, my grandfather told my father, using the name the dogman had taught him, a sound that approximated to human speech. He's family. Different from us, but family. And one day, protecting him will be your responsibility. My father grew up with Marek, played in the forests, knowing something ancient watched over him, brought food to the den, learned the boundaries, understood that some secrets were sacred, that some responsibilities passed through generations. When my grandfather died, my father inherited the property and the pact. 40 more years of protection. 40 years of maintaining the boundary markers, keeping the secret, ensuring Marek's safety. And when I was born in 1995, I became the third generation. I grew up differently than most children. I knew about Marek from age 7, old enough to understand secrets, young enough to accept impossible things as normal. I'd see him occasionally, watching from the tree line, yellow eyes reflecting moonlight. I'd leave food at designated spots and find it gone the next morning. I'd hear his howls echoing through the forest and know he was communicating, marking territory, warning off intruders. My father taught me the rules. Never bring outsiders to the property without warning Marek first. Never photograph him or document evidence that others might find. Never speak about him to anyone who couldn't be trusted absolutely. Maintain the boundary markers. Respect the pact. Honor the protection. We're not his owners, my father would say. We're his guardians, his advocates, his shield against a world that would cage or kill him if they knew he existed. And it worked. For 70 years, it worked. Marek lived safely on our land. We lived peacefully alongside him. There was mutual respect, mutual benefit. He kept predators away from our livestock. We kept humans away from his territory. He warned us about approaching storms and forest fires. We provided medical care when he was injured or sick. It wasn't domestication. Marek was never tame, never pet, never controlled. He was intelligent, independent, capable. But he'd chosen to stay, chosen to maintain the pact, chosen to trust the family that had honored its promise for 3 generations. I was 28 when it ended. When everything my family had protected for 70 years got destroyed in a single morning. The federal agents arrived at 5:47 a.m. I know because I checked my phone when I heard vehicles, plural, at least 6, coming up our long driveway. By the time I got outside, they'd already surrounded the property. Armed agents in tactical gear. Vehicles with government plates. Helicopter circling overhead with what looked like thermal imaging equipment. My father came out behind me, still in his robe, confused and angry. What the hell is this? You're on private property. Get off our land. An agent in a suit approached, holding identification and paperwork. Mr. Hayes? I'm Agent Morrison, Fish and Wildlife Special Operations. We have a federal warrant to search these premises and seize any specimens of Canis lupus cryptidus currently harbored on this property. Canis lupus cryptidus, my father repeated. That's not even a real classification. It's classified, Morrison said, which you'd know if you'd reported your family's unlawful harboring to proper authorities. Instead, you've been concealing a protected specimen for, he checked his paperwork, approximately 70 years. Since your grandfather's initial encounter in 1952. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. They knew. They knew everything. The dates. The history. The entire timeline of our family's protection. How I started. Satellite thermal imaging. Morrison interrupted. Tissue samples from your local veterinarian's office. Your father brought samples for testing in 1998. Claimed they were from an unusual wolf. DNA analysis flagged anomalies that matched our database. We've been monitoring this property for 12 years, confirming the specimen's presence, documenting patterns. We know everything, Mr. Hayes. My father's face went white. The tissue samples. He'd been worried about an infection Marek had, wanted to make sure antibiotics would work properly. He'd been careful, used a fake name, driven 2 counties over. But not careful enough. You can't take him, my father said. He's not yours. He's not anyone's. He's a living being with rights. He's a classified specimen under federal protection statutes, Morrison said, which means he's government property pending assessment and processing. Your family's unauthorized harboring has prevented proper study and conservation protocols. That ends today. I need to stop here. I need you to comment below. Tell me if you've heard about federal agencies tracking and seizing cryptid species. Tell me if there are other families who've had similar encounters, who've protected beings like Marek, who've been raided and silenced. Tell me if there's legal precedent, if there's resistance, if there's any way to fight back. Comment now. Share this video. Spread this information. Because what happened next, what they did to extract Marek, what my family suffered for trying to protect him, that needs to be witnessed. Needs to be remembered. Needs to spark outrage rather than be buried in classified files no one will ever see. The agents moved through our property with practiced efficiency. They'd clearly done this before, had protocols, had experience. Some teams swept the house, confiscating journals, photographs, my grandfather's written records of the pact. Another team set up equipment in the forest, thermal cameras, motion sensors, speakers broadcasting sounds I couldn't identify. "What are you doing?" I demanded. Calling him in, an agent said, "We use recorded vocalizations of his species. Mating calls, distress signals, territorial challenges. Something will trigger response." "You'll terrify him," my father said. 70 years, he's trusted us, lived peacefully. And you're going to traumatize him for what? Study? Captivity. Morrison looked at my father with something that might have been sympathy. "Mr. Hayes, there are fewer than 30 confirmed Canis lupus cryptidus specimens worldwide. They're critically endangered. We need to protect them, study them, potentially establish breeding programs. Your specimen has valuable genetic diversity. He'll be treated humanely, I promise." "He has a name," I said. "Marek. He's not a specimen. He's a person." "He's an animal," Morrison corrected. "Highly intelligent, granted. But an animal. And animals belong in proper conservation facilities, not hiding on private land where they can't contribute to species preservation." The broadcast sound started. Howls that made my skin crawl, that sounded wrong even though they were supposed to be DOGMAN vocalizations. Recorded, artificial, manipulated. Nothing like Marek's natural sounds. We waited. 30 minutes. An hour. Nothing. "He's not coming," my father said. "He's smart enough to know this is a trap." Morrison made a gesture. Another team moved into the forest, different equipment. "Then we go to him. Thermal imaging has his den location marked. We have tranquilizer protocols approved for specimens up to 400 pounds. This happens either way, Mr. Hayes. Cooperation just makes it easier." My father tried to follow them into the forest. Agents blocked him. We stood there, my father, my mother who'd emerged from the house, and me, watching strangers invade territory that wasn't theirs, hunting someone who'd done nothing wrong except exist. The first gunshot came 20 minutes later. Not lethal, tranquilizer, loud report. Then shouting. Then more shots. Then something that made my blood freeze, Marek's howl. Not communication. Not marking territory. Pain. Fear. Betrayal. My father broke past the agents, sprinting toward the sound. I followed. We crashed through forest we knew better than anyone, following sounds that tore at our hearts. We found them in a clearing near Marek's den. 8 agents surrounding him, 4 tranquilizer darts in his side. He was on his knees, swaying, fighting the sedatives with everything he had. Yellow eyes found my father, found me. The look in those eyes, I'll never forget it. Confusion. Hurt. Question that gutted me. "Why?" "Marek," my father called. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We tried." "Stay back," Morrison ordered, weapon raised. "Not at Marek. At my father. Don't approach the specimen." "He's scared," I said. "Let us calm him. Let us explain." "Explain what? That you've been hiding him from proper authorities for 70 years? That your family's selfish protection prevented conservation efforts that could have saved his entire species." Marek tried to stand. Couldn't. Too much sedative in his system. He collapsed forward, caught himself with massive paws, stayed on all fours. Breathing hard. Head hanging. Defeated. My father dropped to his knees. "Forgive us," he whispered. "Please forgive us. We tried. We tried so hard." More agents approached with what looked like a reinforced cage on wheels. Industrial strength. Built for something powerful and dangerous. They moved cautiously around Marek, positioning the cage, preparing to load him. That's when he did something that broke me completely. He looked at my father, made eye contact, and placed one massive paw over his heart. Same gesture my grandfather described from 1952. Same acknowledgement. Same recognition of bond, of trust, of pact. He wasn't angry. Wasn't blaming us. He understood. Understood we couldn't stop this. Understood the pact had been broken by forces beyond our control. And he was telling us, it's okay. You tried. I know you tried. Then the sedatives finally took him completely. He collapsed. Unconscious. Vulnerable. And they loaded him into the cage like he was cargo. My father screamed. Actually screamed. A sound of anguish I'd never heard from him before. My mother was sobbing. I stood there, numb, watching them seal the cage and load it onto a truck. Watching them take Marek away after 70 years of protection. Watching 3 generations of trust get destroyed because we'd been careful but not careful enough. Morrison approached us as they prepared to leave. Your family will receive compensation for the unauthorized harboring. You'll also receive citations and fines for violations of federal wildlife protection statutes. Sign the non-disclosure agreements, accept the settlement, and this ends quietly. Refuse, and we pursue criminal charges. Your choice. Where are you taking him? I demanded. Classified facility. He'll be studied, cared for, potentially matched with other specimens for breeding purposes. He'll contribute to his species' survival instead of dying alone in these woods. He wasn't alone, my father said. He had us. He had family. He had captors, Morrison corrected. Well-meaning captors, but captors nonetheless. You prevented him from living with his own kind, from reproducing, from contributing to species preservation. You thought you were protecting him. You were isolating him. They left. 6 vehicles, helicopter following, driving away with Marek unconscious in a cage in the back of a reinforced truck. We stood in our driveway, our property violated, our purpose stolen, watching until they disappeared from sight. The next 3 months were bureaucratic nightmare. Lawyers, federal agents conducting more interviews. Seizure of additional materials we'd thought were hidden. Financial penalties that nearly bankrupted us. And the NDAs, pages and pages of legal language that basically said we could never speak about Marek, never reveal what had been taken, never seek information about where he'd been taken or what was being done to him. My father signed. My mother signed. I signed. What choice did we have? They had all the power, all the authority, all the legal framework that said they were right and we were criminals. But before signing, I made copies. Every journal entry from my grandfather, every photograph we'd hidden, every piece of evidence of 70 years of peaceful coexistence. I encrypted it, distributed it, protected it the way my family had protected Marek. And I started researching, using resources they didn't know I had access to, following leads, finding others. Here's what I learned. We weren't the only family. There are others, dozens, maybe hundreds, who've had similar encounters, who've protected DOGMAN, Sasquatch, other cryptids for generations. Quiet families on remote properties, maintaining pacts, honoring agreements, living peacefully alongside beings that supposedly don't exist. And the government knows, has known for decades. They track us, monitor us, wait until they have enough evidence to justify seizure. Then they raid, confiscate, silence. Always claiming conservation, always claiming protection, always taking beings that were living free and putting them in facilities we're not allowed to know about. I found others who'd been raided, families torn apart like mine, people who'd lost beings they'd protected for generations. And I found something else. None of them know what happens to the specimens after seizure. No follow-up, no updates. Just silence. It's not conservation, one man told me, voice bitter. Conservation requires transparency, requires oversight, requires proof of welfare. This is collection. This is imprisonment. This is something else entirely, and they're hiding it behind national security classifications. I tried to find Marek, filed Freedom of Information requests, hired lawyers who specialized in classified material, got nowhere. Every request denied. Every inquiry blocked. It's like he disappeared into a black hole of federal secrecy. My father hasn't been the same since. He's aged 20 years in 3 months. Stops sometimes, staring at the forest, looking for yellow eyes that aren't there anymore. My mother avoids the property entirely, can't stand the emptiness. And me, I'm making this video, breaking every agreement, burning every bridge. Because someone has to. Someone has to tell the truth about what the federal government is doing. Someone has to witness that families like mine exist, that beings like Marek exist, that peaceful coexistence is possible if we're just allowed to maintain it. Someone has to ask the questions they don't want asked. Where are the specimens taken? What happens in those classified facilities? Who oversees their treatment? What gives the government the right to seize beings that were living free and protected? And most importantly, are they really protecting endangered species, or are they collecting something they want to study for reasons they won't share? I don't have answers. I just have loss. 3 generations of protection ended in 90 minutes. 70 years of trust destroyed by people who claimed they knew better. A being who honored a pact taken by force and hidden somewhere we'll never find him. Please, like this video, subscribe, share it everywhere. Download it before they take it down, because they will try to take it down. They'll flag it, suppress it, claim it violates terms of service or spreads misinformation. But it's not misinformation, it's truth. Documented truth spanning 70 years. My family's truth, Marek's truth, and the truth of however many other families have been silenced. Tell me in the comments if you know others, if you've heard similar stories. If you're protecting someone right now and terrified the same thing will happen to you. Connect, share, build networks they can't suppress. Because individual families are vulnerable. But communities, networks, groups of people refusing to stay silent, that's harder to suppress. That's harder to control. My family did nothing wrong. We honored a pact. We protected someone who couldn't protect himself in a world that would cage or kill him. We gave him 70 years of safety and freedom. And for that, we've been punished, investigated, threatened, silenced. But I'm not staying silent. Marek deserves better. My family deserves better. And every other family protecting cryptids deserves to know what's coming for them. The government is watching. They're tracking. They're building cases. And eventually, they come for everyone. Unless we stop them. Unless we organize, unless we make this public enough that they can't operate in shadows anymore. I don't know if this video will help. Don't know if it'll make any difference. But I have to try. For my grandfather who made a pact in 1952. For my father who honored it for 40 years. For Marek, wherever he is now, hoping he knows we didn't abandon him by choice. And for every other family out there, protecting someone in secret, terrified of the day federal agents arrive at dawn. You're not alone. We're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us speak up, we can change what happens next. But first, we have to survive speaking up. And I don't know if I will.